Golden, who's the Queensland State Manager of Uber. I think all of you are probably quite excited to hear what Uber has to say. We hear a huge amount of talk in our industry about mobility, about autonomous vehicles, and I think Uber is one of the leading organisations that is potentially going to change the environment that we all work in. Thanks very much.
Cool. We're doing our best. So, cheers. Great to be here today. We actually share a driveway with the urban developer guys, and the landlord is constantly coming to us saying that the neighbours complaining. You've got far too many Uber Eats couriers banging on the neighbour's door, so maybe this will make up for all of that. Main thing I want to talk about today. Where's my clicker? Do I? I don't know. Cool. Any Q&A before we start? That's the fun stuff. I would like to follow that. Does anyone want to throw some curveballs?
How long do you replace the drivers by?
Look, we're not going to replace them straight away. It's going to be gradual, but we are testing in the US. So far we've completed 30,000 trips with autonomous vehicles. There is an engineer sitting there ready to hit the big red button, but I think we've completed over 1 million miles. So I think that's getting us closer and closer than just testing an autonomous vehicle that doesn't have a passenger in it.
Do you see big pushback from the state governments to roll that out?
Look, at the moment we've been kind of banging heads over the last couple of years to allow them to put people in cars. So at the moment that's not an issue and we're working well together, but it's something that we've got to nail the basics before we can look at that. But I did see a paper that was released, I think it was University of New South Wales, that's actually comparing the different states and the infrastructure that's being set up. So I think, as alluded to in the last presentation, it's very much a factor of that infrastructure being set up in cities so that the cars have something to read. Otherwise it can be pretty messy. Yeah, I knew that one would come up. Look, I don't know the exact detail. What I do know is that we do disagree with the decision. There's, I think, something like 60,000 drivers that rely on it for a source of income, and there's millions of passengers that use it every single week. So I think it's something that we'll be working with regulators to fix, but in terms of like my focus, it's purely Queensland. Looks like we're good. So today I'm going to talk about the future of urban mobility. In like its simplest form, it's like how we see the future of getting people from A to B in a way that reduces congestion, pollution, and parking. And how do we do that? Using today's infrastructure and tomorrow's technology. So before I jump into that, I thought I'd tell the quick story of kind of how this all started. Things have moved pretty quick, but on New Year's Eve in 2008, our two co-founders were sitting by the road and they couldn't get a trip. They were trying to stop taxis. They were having no luck. They were freezing their asses off, very frustrated, but seeing lots of cars going past with just one person in it and thinking, hold on, there's an idea here. I would happily pay to get in that person's car, and I'm sure they would happily receive money to go from A to B. So they went home. Unfortunately, they had a bit of money from a previous venture, and they built the app. But when the app was first built, it was for their friends. It was a kind of a private club. They thought it'd be pretty cool that they can press a button and a limo will show up. But this kind of spread amongst their friends, and in 2012, they launched the full app. Fast forward to 2017, the app is far more developed, far more features, and over 5 million trips take place every single day. So our mission is transportation as reliable as running water, everywhere for everyone. Now, we work relentlessly to make sure that no matter what part of the city you're in, you can get a trip that's affordable and that will go where you want them to go. Now, this is kind of expanded into other services everywhere for everyone, whether it's food or I'll show you later some stuff with trucking, but that's kind of what we live and die by. So now we're in 600 cities, over 70 countries, and we have 2 million drivers that rely on the Uber platform to feed their families. So it's easy to demonize a car. There's well over 1 billion of these hunks of steel globally, and it's growing at a rapid pace. But it's not so much the car that's the problem, it's how we use them. And we use them individually. Now, a couple days a week, I try to ride my bike to work. No Lycra, but I go in that lane that if you have 2 or more passengers in your car, it's the express lane. And it's pretty empty. And you look to the right, and for kilometres, these cars are just backed up with one person in them. It's a problem that we all experience. It's a problem that we all contribute to at times. So it's something that we're very focused on finding a better way. So a huge amount of global carbon emissions come from vehicles, 22%. But it's not just that cost, it's also the cost of time to individuals. So in Sydney and Los Angeles, people spend 2 whole working weeks stuck in traffic. You go to somewhere like Mexico City and it's 5 weeks. This is time that could be spent with friends, family, at work, but instead it's time not moving. But that's only 4% of the problem. Cars sit idle for 96% of the time. Now, cities are quite often designed around this need, the need for so many parks per person that lives in an office building, works in an office building or lives in an apartment building. In the US, there are 8 parking spots per vehicle. So there's a huge opportunity space for parking. When you consider that we build buildings, we build below buildings, we have lanes on the street. If you think about all those uses, it's pretty exciting. And people are pushed to car ownership by design, by urban design. So even when you consider a place like New York that has phenomenal public transport, not everyone lives close to a train stop. There's over 2.7 million cars drive into New York every single day. Now, it's usually those lower income families that are the most disadvantaged because they can't afford to live near these public transport hotspots. Now, a lot of these families will invest in a car, and if you invest in a car, you're going to use it. So back to our mission, everywhere for everyone. If you look at the map on the left-hand side of the screen, it shows where we were when we launched. About 6 months after launching. So you can see that the wait times are more, the spread is smaller. I remember how hard it was to get trips happening out somewhere like Cleveland or in between Brisbane and the Gold Coast. But now you can see that it just continues to spread as this platform grows. Kind of the distinction between Brisbane, the Gold Coast and the Sunshine Coast is becoming smaller and smaller. Now anywhere in Brisbane, across all of Brisbane, the average time to get a trip is 4 minutes, which sometimes it's too quick because you're not ready for it. Now, what drivers tell us about the best part of driving with Uber is the fact that you're your own boss. You can choose whenever you want to work, as much or as little as you want. But as you'd expect, drivers tend to drive when it's busiest, when they're going to make the most money, when they're needed the most. There isn't a fixed supply. It goes up and down as passengers need it. So what we see is that a majority of our pickups happen at these late Friday, Saturday night times when people are out drinking, where access to transport or taxis is limited. So this gets people out of those areas. It reduces that high concentration. And we all know when there's a high concentration of impatient, intoxicated people, it's a recipe for disaster. Another interesting thing to look at is the number of trips that happen near the end of a public transport route. Now, in New South Wales, approximately 60% of trips happen in transport deserts. So we talk about the last mile effect in, you may not have a bus stop or a train stop near where you live. The train will get you most of the way there, but Uber being able to take you that last spot, that last kilometre for a very affordable rate, extends the reach of the public transport network. It's far cheaper than building extra park and go, building extra train stations. If someone can go that extra bit for $6 or $7, it helps solve those problems. Now, government's also realising that we can help solve those problems too. In Canberra, we partnered for a night bus service that would get people where they need to go. If you think about a bus service that's going to meet the needs of everyone, it's going to zigzag everywhere. And it's not going to be very economical, it's not going to be very reliable. But partnering with Uber to kind of get people out of those areas as a bit of a hub and spoke model has proven very successful. We're in discussions with the New South Wales government at the moment to look at ways of operating small shuttle buses for them. When you look at the cost of operating some of these public transport routes, they're highly underutilised, huge cost, and extremely unreliable. So thinking of ways that we can use our technology to better connect people and provide more reliable services is certainly helping governments. So some of our data scientists and even just people in our team a few years ago realised that they're going on a lot of trips that are going in the exact same direction as other people. And they looked into this further and thought, okay, how can we design a product that will match two people together? Now, they figured out the technology to do it. Now, the question is, would you be comfortable sitting next to a stranger to save a few dollars? But the answer has been yes. In the markets that we operate, we see that riders are happy for it to be cheaper. Drivers are happy to earn more. And it's great for cities in that we're getting cars off the road. So we now have Uber Pool in 36 cities worldwide, 25% of trips in pool cities. 25% of all trips in pool cities are Uber Pool trips, and 45% of trips in San Francisco are Uber Pool. So you can see on the graph the difference in congestion between normal trips, or if that same amount of trips were Uber Pool trips. The congestion on the road is markedly different. So it's 76% of all workday trips are done in private cars. Now, we've all seen the highway jammed. If any of you have ever commuted from the Gold Coast, you know what it's like. And the average occupancy in Brisbane is 1.2 people per car. Building new infrastructure to cater for this increasing number of vehicles and high congestion is certainly not the answer. And what we're seeing globally is this trend for there to be a reduction in the likelihood of kids to get their driver's license. I think this generation is going to be the first generation to be less likely to get their driver's license than the previous one. Now, when you consider the cost of operating a car, the Australian Automobile Association estimates that the cost of running a car in Brisbane is $385 per week, plus the 200 hours that you need to do to get on the road, coupled with the fact that there's now an option. There's a convenient, affordable option to get you from A to B. When I was a kid, the first thing I wanted to do when I turned 18, I think I did it on my 18th birthday, was to go get my driver's license. But I'd say for most of you that have young children, I think there's a good chance you may not ever need to teach them how to drive. So another thing we're investing heavily in the US is driverless cars. You've probably seen stuff in the news. There's big dramas when there's ever a crash. I remember this news story that said, like Uber self-driving program over in a big crash, and it was really just a car that ran up the butt of it. It's not too much you can do about that. But like I said before, we've done 30,000 trips in these cars. We've done over 1 million miles. And an OECD study recently found that self-driving cars could reduce the number of cars on the road by 90% or more. Now that's only if they're shared. And that's the key, is with driverless cars, they're going to be very expensive. They're going to be very expensive to maintain. The key is for them to be shared and constantly utilised, which I think it's something we're all going to experience in the coming years in Australia. Cool. Another thing we've looked at, completely unrelated, but I find it interesting to talk about, is a product called Uber Freight. So similar to Uber, I guess a number of people saw that there was an industry that's operating really inefficiently, that jobs are being dispatched with faxes. There's drivers that are getting work one week but not the next. They're getting sent in the direction they don't want to go. It's difficult to get paid. It's difficult to figure out the analytics of how your supply chain is working. So they've come up with a separate app that's for connecting people that need stuff moved with trucks and with truck drivers. And we're seeing great results in the US. We're excited what that may be for Australia, but we've been told that they're so stretched there right now that it'll be a little bit of time before we get it here. I don't know if any of you guys have seen this one. It's called Vtol, Virtual Takeoff and Landing. A couple years ago, our Chief Innovation Officer, Jeff Holden, told us that he's working on some project around flying cars. We thought, you're crazy. What do you mean flying cars? We're just trying to get people from A to B in private cars, and we're having trouble doing that. But he's progressed really far with this program, and we've committed to rolling this out for testing in Dubai and Dallas by 2020. And he was actually in Sydney a month ago talking about doing something there. So this is essentially a large autonomous battery-powered drone that can carry in the range of 20 to 50 people. So for San Francisco, for people that live, I think it's Palo Alto, in traffic it may take an hour and a half. In one of these it takes 10 minutes. So in terms of the way we live and the way we commute, the way we plan our lives, these modes of transport are really going to change that. Cool. So that's been a very, very brief overview of what we do, what we're focused on. Basically, we see a future where we can provide public good by using private vehicles, reducing congestion, reducing pollution, gaining back valuable land, and providing more affordable, reliable, and safe transport options. Thank you.